in that case, I'll actually kind of um, touch on a topic or an idea rather that you mentioned in a blog that you wrote. It was on Kyla Ritchie's website
Hmm.
actually, and you were talking specifically about setting goals and striving for potential to fulfill your potential. And you mentioned this idea of ecstasis. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, from Jamie Wheel and from Stealing Fire. Have you read Stealing Fire?
I haven't, but it sounds
Great
great. And
book.
I
Great book.
some of their like read some blogs and
Yeah.
watched a couple of videos. I was like, these people are like both crazy and awesome in their like intensity for what they're like super into. So if you could explain a little bit about that or just talk about goal setting in general, how do we kind of because there's this idea of like setting goals and it's pervasive like everywhere from leadership to sports and whatever. And I've always like had a bit of a hesitancy for this just because I think we idolize it a little bit because sometimes we just set this goal and we go after it and we fail to reevaluate that as new information comes in. We fail to recognize if we're even setting the right goals. Are we going towards something that someone else kind of put in front of us or what we think is right, but we haven't done that like self-reflection? How do you sort through that in your own life?
Yeah, I think goal setting it's so true. It's such a interesting topic, especially one that I also agree has been probably a little like manufactured as the epitome of high performance or however you describe it. Um, but I think there's a few things. Yeah, I'll kind of touch on what I think are some issues with goal setting and what how I set my goals and why. I think a couple issues are one, and on all these, and when I say like issues, it's all based on my typically my own experience. A lot of it is having high ambitions as a young athlete and watching that progress and evaluating that and reflecting on that. And one is that if you set a goal, it may depend a little bit on your personality type, but it's pretty easy to get tunnel vision towards that goal. And at times that may be awesome and totally aligned with your core values, and it may be exactly what you want to do. But if you're unaware of those core values or you're unaware of what's not in the tunnel, that can end up being a little bit detrimental, and it can actually like affect you both in your mental health, both in all sorts of different things. So I think one concern about that, and I mean, I have a super obsessive personality. So if all of a sudden I set a goal and it's got enough weight behind it, like it won't stop until that's happened, right? And a lot of times then I look back and it's like, whoa, there was some things that I wish happened differently. So one is that I think the tunnel vision is a quality that needs to be chosen, not a quality that like we just want to accept. And then another thing that comes along with that tunnel vision is kind of like you said, if those are the goals we actually want. But for me, a lot of it is okay. So if you achieve that goal, where does that actually leave you? Right. So for me, like if my ultimate goal is I want to be the best player in the world, okay, then I become the best player in the world. Now what happens? Right. If you have such tunnel vision and you've put so much weight behind that goal, it's not going to feel as good as you think it's going to feel. It's not going to give you personal fulfillment, right? You're not going to be self-actualized when you become the best player in the world or whatever it is. And B, there may be nothing set up for after that, right? Like you may have just been, oh, I really want to make it to the Olympics. Then you go to the Olympics, and then now it's year after the Olympics, and you're like, wow, I have no context of who I am, what I want, all these kind of things. So I think framework and structure can be very useful, but that they're always a tool. Like goal setting is a tool for you to use. It's not a lifestyle that you need to embody. And I think Jordan Peterson puts it pretty cool. Just to paraphrase, he kind of has the concept of you want to have an aim, and that aim would be your goal. Like let's say my aim is to win the Olympics, and then you're always evaluating what the trajectory is. So there's kind of this like bow and arrow target you're aiming at, but you're always variables are always changing, right? So that aim may stay the same. It might always be, I want to win an Olympic gold medal, but how I'm doing that might change. What that looks like might change. I need to be, because if you're in that tunnel vision, a lot of times, like we've talked about, that inertia or that momentum can get in your way, right? All of a sudden you're blinded to the fact that, oh, being more authentic will help my team. Oh, taking more responsibility delegating more, taking less responsibility, right? All these things factor into it that you may not see if you're so hyper focused on a goal. And then I think the big thing, and I think it happens quite, with a lot of Olympians, is the fact that when you get there, it's so amazing, and then it's over. And maybe it wasn't, like I mentioned, it wasn't the fulfilling piece that you were missing in your life. And I think the cool thing about that, doing a little bit more, personal work and all those kind of things, is it's now your expectations are set up so differently than they would be. Now I think going into the Tokyo Olympics, like I will, it'll be easier for me to be more present. It will be easier for me to enjoy the moment more. It'll be easier for me to understand how this relates into my personal life, not only just my athletic career. And I think having those qualities are almost more beneficial than just having your sights locked on a target and going towards them. So I think that's like a little bit of my feelings on goal setting. I think I would never say it's a bad practice. I think it's super cool. But I think what it's actually signaling isn't the goal. I think what it's signaling is, what do you value? Like if you start setting up goals and all of them are, like I'm just totally going to paraphrase and randomly make up stuff. But let's say like your goals are, you want to have a family, you want to have a certain amount of money, you want to have whatever. Okay, what does that actually equate to in a value structure? Okay, maybe you really value community and relationship and conversations with people and things like that. Money, maybe it's really, you want freedom, you want to make different decisions, you want to be more authentic, because if you have the capacity to do so financially, you can express yourself in a different way. And I think that can be a valuable tool in almost your ability to reflect on what you want. But I think it can be a slippery slope that you're kind of, locked into something that you potentially, or all the like fallacies of like, oh, I'm so close to that goal, so I better keep pushing for it, or, oh, like I'm half, right? Like, is that necessarily what is best for you? Is that necessarily what you actually want? Is that how you relate to that objective? But yeah, those are some thoughts.
I love that idea of the trajectory because it helps you shift from that like tunnel vision, selective attention that you're just hyper focused on one thing, to a more like open awareness, so that you're open to these opportunities and peripheral chances that kind of come into our realm as we're kind of on that right path. But it might be kind of like one of those things to get to the top of where we want to go. And yeah, no, it's a whole topic that we can talk about for days and days and days. I recently read, actually just this morning, I'm reading Focus by Daniel Goleman, and
Nice.
I'm just loving it. Have you read it?
I haven't, no, but I've definitely heard of it.
Yeah. And he talks about, I forget his name, but a Zen master in archery came to this institute in California, um, and he was basically going to give them a demonstration of like his prowess in archery. So they go to like the top of this hill that's just on this cliff right in front of the Pacific Ocean, and they have the target set up. And so he goes a fair distance away, and he like pulls back the bow and lets it fly. And the crowd watches as the arrow like goes way above the target and then falls into the Pacific Ocean. And then the guy, I wish I remembered his name, he's just like, bullseye. And it's an interesting analogy about how we view success, because sometimes we set up things as the ultimate goal, especially depending on how we view things in society. We're going to be shooting for that one goal. But we can also be shooting for something that's invisible to everybody who's watching, that might be even more important. That might be even more important than being the best player in the world, whatever that means. That all those peripheral things that lead to this greater goal that's even greater than what we laid out in the first place, that we didn't even realize we needed to be working towards, and we end up. So I just love that kind of juxtaposition of working towards things that aren't always seen and aren't always valued as much as they should be, but kind of end up being that bullseye, that ultimate goal.